everybody, what's going on? And thanks for joining me in this episode of Hey Coach. In today's video, we answer the question, hey Coach, how much protein should I recommend my clients? So there's a lot of different variables that we need to be able to consider before we just assume a general guideline of protein. So we could basically boil this down into three different types of people and their activity levels. So we have somebody who is client A, let's just call them client A, who is very new to resistance training. Maybe he's only resistance training 2 days a week. We'll have client B, who is a moderately experienced weightlifter. Maybe they exercise 3-4 days a week. And then we'll have client C, who is like a bodybuilder who really wants to focus on growing more tissue, who really just wants to make sure that they're optimizing their ability to build muscle mass. So we have three different clients here. Now we have a guideline to start out at the low end of 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight for that client, or lean body mass. I prefer to use lean body mass personally. And then all the way up to roughly, I believe it'd be like 0.55 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass. So that would be our range. Now what does that equate to from a numbers perspective per day? That range I just listed was per meal. So let's go ahead and mention the entire day. What would that be? So let's go ahead and talk about this range that we would fit client A, B, or C into. Basically this range, and these are going to be protein requirements per day. We could start off at the very low end of 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass per day. Now I prefer to use lean body mass instead of the actual weight of the person. I don't feel like it's as applicable for a client who may be 300 or so pounds, who may have over 100 pounds of fat mass. All the way up to, on the other side of the scale, 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. Now that's a big scale. So to provide you guys some numbers, I am 190 pounds and I have about 170 pounds of lean body mass. So at the low end of the scale, I may only require 135 to 140 grams of protein, which for me, I look at that and I'm like, oh man, I could probably eat that in like 2 or 3 meals, right? But on the other side of that, this is where I would fit in, because I typically resistance train 4 to 5, sometimes even 6 days per week. I'm trying to cause a lot of muscular damage. I have more muscle mass on me than, let's say, a person who's very newly trained with low levels of experience. So I could push that all the way up to 200 or even more grams of protein per day. Now 200 grams for me or any other bodybuilder my size sounds pretty ideal, and I would argue that it's likely the best method for you to go is having 4 meals, 50 grams of protein per meal, and having each meal spaced out roughly every 4 hours. I would consider that to be ideal right now. And if you wanted to push it to the next level, possibly in the middle of your sleep, downing maybe 2 servings of whey protein in the middle of the night may suit you good as well, just because that way you're constantly in an anabolic state and you're not taking 8 hours of fasting while you sleep. But that's for a whole nother video. So protein requirements. We're basically looking at a large range here of protein requirements. So from 140 grams for myself all the way up to 200 grams is big. But how do you dictate who needs which one when we're talking about client A, client B, and client C? Well, client A likely has less lean body mass, less experienced resistance training, is causing less damage to their body, so they may be able to fit in that lower area of protein intake. Now client B, who's likely more experienced, has more muscle mass because of their experience in the gym, may be working out 3 to 4 times per week. You could likely increase their protein. So if this was somebody who's my size, instead of having them at 135, 140, maybe have them around 160, somewhere around there, 160 grams up to 170 grams of protein per day. That may be ideal. Now the upper echelon bodybuilder, somebody who is really focusing on trying to optimize muscle protein synthesis, you know, maybe they're eating 4 or 5 meals per day and never wants to have a second off of being anabolic. What are we talking about in regards to protein intake? Well, I would argue that 200 to 250 grams of protein per day may be ideal for this specific bodybuilder, but that's going to dictate whether or not they're waking up in the middle of the night to have that extra serving of whey protein during that 4-hour time period. So with online fitness coaching, everything revolves around the application and who you're trying to help. All of these different people that I just mentioned, they all have different goals, they have a different mindset. More importantly, they're in a different level of their fitness journey. So you need to be able to help them with where they're currently at, not helping them like you would help somebody else just because maybe that fits into a specific guideline. Another really good recommendation for protein intake is when you have a client who's not used to eating high levels of protein. How do you transition them into eating more of a recommended amount of protein? What I personally like to do is a slow, gradual progression. So most of Americans only eat protein in their last meal of the day, meaning they usually skip protein for breakfast, they skip protein for lunch, and then at dinner everybody comes home, the husband, the wife, the kids, they all sit at the table and they eat their dinner. And that's usually the only meal of the day where they're getting an adequate amount of protein. So they're only activating protein synthesis once per day. So what does that one meal equate? Maybe 30, 40, maybe 50 grams of protein in that one meal? And I don't think it's ideal to take a client from 50 grams up to 150 because that's triple their amount. They're not going to be used to that. It's going to be a very drastic lifestyle change. So rather take them from 50, maybe take them to 80, and then we can take them to 100, 120, wherever they end up, but do it in gradual phases so that they can adapt better lifestyle habits throughout that process and they don't get upset to the fact that you're trying to triple their protein intake in one day. Thanks for checking out this video, guys. I really hope that it helps with the application of protein with your specific clientele. See you guys in the next one.